The dusty streets of Willow Creek always had a way of echoing with whispers, and tonight those whispers carried the name of Clara, a young woman with a baby in her arms and nowhere to go. She had been abandoned by her kin, called a burden for daring to carry the weight of both her own life and her child's after her husband died in a mining accident. The townsfolk watched her pass with cold eyes, muttering that she was nothing but trouble, that the baby would grow up fatherless and she would never find her place. Clara, with her torn blue dress and tired eyes, held her son close, whispering lullabies that cracked under the weight of her sorrow. But among the rough stares and heartless voices, one pair of eyes saw something different, eyes shaded beneath the brim of a cowboy's hat. His name was Luke, a ranch hand who had lost more than most men his age but carried himself with quiet strength and a gentleness hidden behind calloused hands. He watched Clara stumble across the street, head bowed as a group of men sneered, one spitting on the ground near her boots, saying, "She's a burden with that baby." Nothing more. Luke stepped forward, his boots striking the dust with authority, his hand resting on the buckle of his belt as he looked those men in the eye and said, "Firm as steel, she's no burden. She's a blessing, and so is he." His words silenced the jeers, and Clara looked up for the first time in days, her breath catching in her throat. No one had spoken for her, not since she'd been left with nothing but her child, and the memory of love stolen too soon. Luke tipped his hat and extended his hand, not in pity but in promise, and when Clara hesitated, clutching her son tighter, he added softly, "You don't have to carry this alone." The days that followed were not easy, but they were different. Luke brought Clara and the baby to his ranch on the outskirts of town, a place where the prairie stretched wide and the sky painted itself new every dawn. Clara worked hard, helping in the kitchen, mending clothes and feeding the hens, while Luke tended to the cattle and rode long miles to sell what he could, to keep food on the table. At night, when the baby cried, Luke would often rise before Clara could, walking the creaky floors with the boy in his arms, whispering stories about the stars, about hope, about the strength of love that never quits. Slowly, Clara began to smile again, her cheeks warming under the touch of sunlight and laughter she thought she had lost forever. Yet the town's judgment did not fade so easily. At church, women would whisper behind their hymn books, saying Clara was shameless for living under a cowboy's roof. Men would shake their heads and mutter that Luke had tied himself to a woman with baggage, that he could have had any other girl in town. But Luke, unshaken, held his ground, telling anyone who dared speak ill, "A woman who can love through pain is worth more than gold, and a child who grows up loved is no burden to this earth." One evening, when the sun sank low and painted the fields in molten hues, Clara stood with Luke by the fence, her son asleep in her arms. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "I don't know why you chose to stand by me." Luke turned, his gaze steady, and answered, "Because someone needed to remind you that you were never a burden. You and this little one, you're the reason a man keeps going. Your blessings. Clara, and anyone too blind to see it, doesn't deserve to speak your name." His words broke the walls she had built around her heart, and for the first time since her husband's death, Clara let herself cry, not from despair but from gratitude, leaning against Luke as the night wrapped them in silence. From then on, the story of Clara changed. No longer was she the girl whispered about in shadows. She became the woman who walked tall through the market with her child in one arm and a cowboy at her side, her head high, her heart no longer heavy with shame. And Luke, he was no longer just a ranch hand, but the man who turned ridicule into respect, who showed a town what it meant to see worth where others saw weight. As the seasons turned, Clara's boy learned to walk on the open prairie, his laughter carrying across the grasslands, chasing away the ghosts of sorrow that once haunted his mother's steps. Luke and Clara found not just survival, but a family, one built on resilience, compassion, and the courage to defy a world quick to judge. And though the whispers of the past never vanished entirely, they no longer mattered. For the truth was written in the strength of Clara's smile, in the warmth of Luke's steady hand, and in the joy of a child who grew up knowing he was never unwanted. That truth echoed louder than gossip, louder than scorn, louder than any voice that had ever called her a burden. It was the truth that love makes no one a weight. It makes them a blessing. And as this story settles in your heart, remember this. Sometimes the world will try to call you names, try to weigh you down with labels and doubts. But never forget that your worth cannot be measured by those who cannot see your light. Just like Clara, just like her little boy. You are not a burden, you are a blessing. If this story touched you, inspired you, or reminded you of your own strength, then make sure you subscribe to our channel, because we bring you stories of courage, hope, and love that remind us all of the beauty in never giving up. Stay with us for the next story that might just be the one you need to hear most.